The arena roared as the gates creaked open. Commander Elias, Reaper, Voss stepped forward, blinking against the floodlights. Opposite him, a hulking, reptilian warrior towered over him, 8 feet of muscle, claws, and armored scales. The crowd jeered. The human would die quickly. The horn blared. The beast lunged. Voss moved. A single step. A twist. A flash of silver. The alien warrior collapsed, clutching its throat. Its lifeblood sprayed the sand. The silence was deafening. Voss wiped his blade clean. He was just getting started. The cold bite of metal cuffs dug into Elias Voss's wrists as the cell doors hissed open. Harsh, artificial light flooded the chamber, revealing a dozen alien figures watching him from the shadows. Some lounged on crude stone benches, their armor scarred from past battles. Others sharpened weapons, their gazes indifferent. A massive reptilian warrior, scales dulled with battle grime, sneered from across the room. Another one. Human? Voss didn't answer. He took in his surroundings: cracked walls, the faint stench of blood, the dried stains on the sand-covered floor. A holding cell. A slaughterhouse waiting room. He had seen worse. Another alien, insectoid with twitching mandibles, clicked its claws together. He won his first fight. Small one. Weak opponent. It means nothing. The reptilian chuckled, baring serrated teeth. Let's see how long he lasts. The weak get eaten first. Voss rolled his shoulders, testing the stiffness in his muscles. His first match had been brief. A lumbering brute, slow and overconfident, had gone down in seconds. That wasn't the real challenge. The real fight started now. A set of metal doors slammed open. A towering figure stepped in, his presence commanding instant silence. Overlord Zervek. The arena's master. Voss had studied him from the moment he arrived. 7 feet tall, draped in ceremonial armor that barely concealed the corded muscle underneath. A former champion turned ruler. Ruthless. Calculating. Dangerous. Zervek scanned the room before his piercing yellow eyes landed on Voss. You are not the first human to step into my arena. His voice carried through the chamber, slow and deliberate. Do you know how many have survived? Voss met his gaze without flinching. I'm guessing none. A grin split the Overlord's face. Clever. He gestured to the guards. Take him. 2 armored enforcers grabbed Voss by the arms, hauling him toward the exit. He didn't resist. Not yet. The walk to the pit was short. The sound of the roaring crowd grew louder with every step. They wanted blood. The gates hissed open. Blinding floodlights. The scent of scorched sand. The walls of the crucible towered above, packed with spectators from across the galaxy. In the center of the arena, 2 figures waited. A pair of Herrick twins. 8 feet tall, hulking, insected bodies with blade-like arms and reinforced chitin. Faster than they looked. Meaner than they needed to be. The crowd howled in approval. Voss exhaled slowly. 2 on 1. No weapons. No armor. Just instinct. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. A challenge! The human fights the Herrick brothers. Let's see if his luck holds. A deep horn sounded. The fight began. The twins lunged, coordinated, experienced, no wasted movement. The left one struck first, a sweeping arc meant to sever his head from his shoulders. The right followed, stabbing for his gut. Voss moved. He ducked under the first strike, twisting just enough to let the second blade skim past his ribs. Sand exploded beneath his boots as he shifted his weight, stepping inside their guard. Too close for them to use those oversized weapons effectively. A fist hammered into the left Herrick's abdomen. Chitin cracked. The alien reeled, momentarily staggered. The right Herrick swung again, its blade arm aiming for Voss's spine. He dropped low, kicking its knee inward. A sickening snap. The Herrick screeched as it crumpled. 1 down. The second came at him with rage-fueled speed. Too late. Voss was already moving. He caught the creature's blade mid-swing, twisted, and wrenched it clean out of its socket. The Herrick shrieked, black ichor spraying across the sand. Voss finished it with a single, precise strike to the throat. The crowd fell silent. The announcer hesitated, then spoke. "The human wins!" Then the uproar began. Some cheered. Some jeered. Some demanded a rematch. Voss exhaled, rolling his shoulders as he surveyed the stunned expressions in the stands. The first match had been a warm-up. Now, they were starting to pay attention. Zervek watched from his throne above the arena, fingers steepled. His grin had faded. He had expected a spectacle. He hadn't expected a problem. Voss wiped his hands on his torn pants. The bloodstains weren't his. He turned toward the exit, walking away as the gates opened. He wasn't done yet. The stink of sweat and blood clung to the dimly lit barracks. Voss sat on the edge of a crude metal bench, elbows resting on his knees, as he ran a finger over a fresh gash on his forearm. The fight had been clean, but not without cost. A fraction slower, a misstep, and he'd be cooling in the sand like the Herrick twins. A guttural laugh snapped him from his thoughts. Across the room, a massive, four-armed brute leaned against the wall, grinning with a mouthful of needle-like teeth. "You fight like a cornered beast," the alien rumbled. "Efficient. Ruthless. I like it." Voss didn't respond. He was used to this. The moment a fighter proved they weren't just fodder, the dynamic shifted. Some admired. Others hated. A few decided to get rid of the problem before it got worse. A lean, feline-like warrior sneered from a bunk nearby. "Enjoy your wins, human! The real fights haven't started yet." Voss barely spared him a glance. Posturing was pointless. The crucible only respected one thing. A sharp hiss signaled the barracks door sliding open. A towering, red-skinned enforcer in plated armor stepped in, scanning the room before settling on Voss. "You. Next fight. 5 minutes. No time to recover. No time to plan." They wanted to test him. Fine. Let them. The arena was different this time. Larger. The walls curved inward, creating a dome that trapped the heat, thickening the air. Weapons gleamed from racks along the edges. A rare privilege. Voss stepped forward, muscles coiled, eyes scanning the pit. The crowd was louder now, anticipation crackling in the air. They wanted a bloodbath. Then he saw his opponent. A Ravkar juggernaut. It stood nearly 10 feet tall, thick as a war mech, skin layered in natural armor like stone plating. 4 arms, each ending in hooked claws. Not fast, but strong enough to pulp bone with a single hit. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. "The human faces the mighty Gorvek, undefeated in 20 matches. Will his luck run out?" A horn blared. Gorvek didn't charge. He didn't need to. He advanced. Steady. Measured. Confident. Voss adjusted his stance. No room for error. He needed to be inside the giant's reach before those arms started swinging. Gorvek struck. A hammering downward blow, fast for its size. Voss sidestepped, barely avoiding the crater it left in the sand. A second swing followed, claws slicing through the air. He ducked low, rolling past its legs, coming up behind it. He grabbed a weapon off the rack, a short, single-edged blade. Light. Sharp. Good enough. Gorvek turned with a snarl, sweeping one massive arm toward him. No time to dodge. Voss threw himself forward, inside the arc of the swing. The clawed hand missed his back by inches as he drove the blade upward, right into the gap beneath the juggernaut's ribs. The alien roared, staggering. But it didn't fall. Voss barely had time to move before the creature's lower arm smashed into his side, sending him tumbling across the sand. Pain flared along his ribs. Cracked. Maybe broken. He pushed himself up, shaking off the impact. Gorvek was already closing in. A shadow passed over Voss as the juggernaut leapt. Too fast. Too much mass. No time to get out of the way. So he didn't. Instead, he lunged toward the descending figure, twisting midair. The split-second decision made the difference. Gorvek's bulk crashed down behind him instead of on top of him. The impact shook the ground. Voss landed in a crouch, already driving his blade downward, straight through the base of the alien's thick neck. The juggernaut spasmed, its claws twitching. Then it stopped moving. Silence. Then the crowd erupted. Voss pulled the blade free, flicking off the dark blood as he rose. His ribs screamed in protest, but he ignored it. He had won. Again. He turned toward the high balcony, where Zervek watched. The Overlord's expression was unreadable. But his eyes burned with something new. Not amusement. Concern. Voss didn't smile. He simply walked out, leaving the corpse cooling in the sand behind him. He was still standing. And that was all that mattered. The barracks had changed. Voss could feel it the moment he stepped through the doors. The usual jeers were gone. The mocking stares, the dismissive smirks, they had been replaced by something colder. Recognition. Unease. Fear. He had won again. 3 matches. 3 kills. That was already unheard of for a human. But it wasn't just the victories. It was how he had won. Voss sat on the edge of his cot, wrapping a strip of cloth around his ribs. Bruised, cracked, but not broken. He had felt worse before. Across the room, the reptilian warrior who had mocked him on his first day was watching, eyes narrowed. Voss met his gaze. The alien quickly looked away. That was new. A shadow loomed over him. Zervek's enforcer. The same one who had dragged him out before each fight. On your feet, human! Voss tightened the knot on his bandage and stood. Already? The enforcer didn't answer. He just turned and walked. Voss followed. The crucible was louder than before. The tension in the crowd had changed. This wasn't just entertainment anymore. It was an event. He stepped onto the sand. The massive screens overhead flickered, and for the first time, his name appeared on the kill board. Voss, 3 kills. His name, listed among the arena's deadliest fighters. The crowd reacted immediately. Shock. Excitement. Anger. A human name didn't belong there. Voss barely had time to process it before the opposite gate rumbled open. His opponent stepped forward. Voss's hands clenched. Not just another warrior. Not another brute for the slaughter. A Borovar. The towering, armored species had built their reputation across the galaxy. Siege breakers. Planet killers. Their warriors were the reason entire civilizations surrendered without a fight. And now, one of them stood before him. The crowd exploded. This wasn't just another match. It was a statement. A warning. Zervek was done playing games. The Borovar tilted its head, studying him with solid black eyes. Then it spoke. You are the human. Its voice was a deep, metallic growl. I was ordered to kill you slowly. Voss exhaled. Nothing personal. The Borovar's mouth curled into something resembling amusement. No. Just survival. The horn blared. The Borovar moved like a charging tank, fast, relentless, unstoppable. Voss didn't retreat. He sidestepped at the last second, twisting away as the creature's massive fist slammed down where he had been. The ground shook. The Borovar was already pivoting, swinging. Voss ducked. A fist the size of a human skull whistled past his head. He lashed out, driving an elbow into the alien's exposed side. It was like striking a wall. No effect. The Borovar grabbed him. A mistake. Voss twisted into the grip, slipping free before the crushing force could snap his ribs. He dropped low, slamming his knee into the alien's inner thigh. This time, the Borovar staggered. Voss didn't stop. He pressed the attack. A strike to the throat. A jab to the exposed joint at the shoulder. A brutal palm to the side of the head. Precision over power. The Borovar bellowed in frustration, swinging wildly. Voss ducked under the blow, then vaulted onto the alien's back. His arms snaked around its throat, locking in tight. The Borovar thrashed, but Voss held on. Seconds stretched. The creature's struggles weakened, then stopped. The Borvar collapsed. Voss rolled free, panting. His arms burned, his ribs screamed, but he pushed himself up. The silence was absolute. Then, a single sound broke through. A notification. The kill board flickered. Voss, 4 kills. Voss looked up. Zervek was watching. And this time, the Overlord was no longer amused. He was concerned. Back in the barracks, the atmosphere had changed again. The moment Voss entered, the room shifted. Fighters who once ignored him now tracked his movements. Some with curiosity. Others with worry. One of them stepped forward. The massive 4-armed brute from before. The Borvar, it said slowly. I did not think you would survive. Voss met its gaze. Neither did he. A low rumble of amusement. The Overlord watches you closely now. That is not always a good thing. Voss already knew that. Zervek wasn't just watching. He was calculating. Measuring the threat. Voss exhaled. His kill count had changed everything. And now, the real fight was about to begin. The door to the barracks hissed open. Voss didn't look up. He already knew. Heavy boots approached, slower than usual. The enforcer had always been efficient, a silent executor of Zervek's will. This time, he hesitated. Voss wrapped his hands, tightening the cloth around his knuckles. Who is it? A pause. Then the enforcer exhaled. Not a fight. Voss stopped. That was new. Everything had been a fight. He met the enforcer's gaze. The alien's hardened features were unreadable, but there was something beneath the surface. Something unsettled. Come! Voss followed. They didn't go to the arena. The path twisted, descending into the underbelly of the crucible. The crowd's roar faded as thick metal walls swallowed the sound. They reached a massive door. It rumbled open. Zervek stood inside. Alone. The Overlord had never looked more dangerous. Not in size. Not in weapons. But in presence. He turned, slow and deliberate. You have disrupted my crucible, human. Voss met his gaze. I fought. I won. Zervek chuckled. Yes. But you were not supposed to. The screens behind him flickered. A projection of the kill board filled the space. Voss's name stood alone. 4 kills. And beneath it? No other human. Not a single one. Zervek clasped his hands behind his back. Do you understand what that means? Voss already did. No human had ever survived long enough to even register on the board. The crucible was designed to grind them into spectacle. Zervek sighed. I underestimated you. A mistake I do not make twice. A shift. A presence behind Voss. A second enforcer. Armed. Close. Voss didn't move. Not yet. You have 2 choices. Zervek continued. Die here, quickly and cleanly. He gestured to the enforcer. Or die in the arena. Slowly. Voss exhaled. His ribs still ached. His muscles burned. But he was still standing. And he wasn't done yet. There's a third option. Zervek raised a brow. Enlighten me. Voss took a step forward. You let me fight. Zervek laughed. A genuine, amused sound. Bold. But foolish. The next match would not be another warrior. His voice dropped. It would be me. Voss didn't flinch. Then fight me. Silence. The air thickened. Then, Zervek smiled. Not in humor. In approval. Very well. The arena was silent. This wasn't a match. This wasn't sport. This was an execution. The crowd knew it. They didn't cheer. They didn't chant. They simply watched. Zervek stood across the pit, rolling his shoulders. His armor was gone. He wanted this personal. You fought well. His voice carried through the silence. You die well, too. Voss breathed slow. Controlled. The horn blared. Zervek was fast. Voss barely dodged as a fist shot past his head. The air cracked with the force. He twisted, aiming for the ribs, but Zervek was already turning. A brutal backhand caught Voss in the chest. Pain. Ribs screaming. He hit the sand hard. The Overlord loomed. No hesitation. No mercy. He moved to end it. Voss rolled, barely avoiding the stomp. The ground split beneath the impact. He launched forward. A knee to the gut. A strike to the throat. Precision. Ruthless. Zervek absorbed it. Then smiled. Good. Then he grabbed Voss by the throat and lifted him off the ground. The crowd held its breath. Voss struggled. His vision blurred. Not like this. His fingers found the Overlord's eye. He jammed his thumb deep. Zervek roared. His grip faltered. Voss twisted free, landing hard. He had seconds. Only seconds. He reached the weapon rack. Grabbed the short blade. Zervek turned, one eye ruined. Furious. Voss didn't hesitate. He threw the blade. It buried deep in Zervek's chest. The Overlord staggered. His hand went to the wound. He exhaled once. Then fell. Silence. Then, the kill board flickered. Voss 5 kills. A human name. At the top. The crucible had changed. Forever.